The galaxy was on the brink of collapse, a swirling maelstrom of conflict that consumed everything in its path. For decades, the Zalran Dominion had been expanding unchecked, their fleets sweeping across star systems with brutal precision. Opposing them was the unity of free species, a fragile coalition of worlds that shared little beyond a desire for freedom. They had been fighting valiantly, but cracks in their alliance were growing larger with each passing day. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives from dozens of species gathered. The atmosphere was heavy with desperation. The Unity's leaders were here to make one final plea. And at the center of it all was humanity, silent, enigmatic, and powerful in its neutrality. They had been the diplomats, the traders, the mediators of the galactic stage. Their position had allowed them to grow rich and influential, yet they steadfastly avoided entanglements in wars that didn't involve them directly. Ambassador Kara Miles sat at her usual place, her composed face betraying nothing of the storm of arguments echoing in the chamber. She listened as representatives of the Shera, an aquatic race, passionately outlined the atrocities committed by the Zalran. Their colonies were being burned, their people enslaved. Others followed, each voice laced with fear, pleading for humanity to step in. You have the resources, the intelligence, the technology, a reptilian representative hissed, their tail lashing against the floor. If humanity does not intervene, the Unity will fall, and with it, everything the free species of this galaxy have built. Kara folded her hands, her tone calm but firm. Humanity sympathizes with your plight. But we must remind the Council that neutrality has served us well. It is not a position we take lightly, nor will we abandon it hastily. This response was met with uproar. Some accused humanity of cowardice, others of selfishness. But Kara didn't flinch. She had heard it all before. To those outside the human sphere, neutrality looked like opportunism. They didn't understand the risks humanity faced, nor the complex balance they had maintained in a galaxy perpetually on the edge of war. Behind the polished exterior of humanity's diplomatic corps, however, trouble was brewing. Unknown to the rest of the Council, human intelligence agents had intercepted classified Zalran communications. The contents of those messages painted a chilling picture. The Dominion had developed a bioweapon. But it wasn't just any weapon, it was specifically engineered to target humans. A genetic plague designed to spread quickly, silently, and lethally. The implications were clear. Neutrality no longer guaranteed safety. The Zalran Dominion didn't care whether humanity participated in the war or not. To them, humanity was a threat simply by existing. In a secure chamber deep within the Terran embassy, Kara reviewed the intelligence reports. She remained seated, but her hands gripped the table as she scanned the data. The Dominion's strategy was bold, ruthless, and unmistakable. They planned to deploy the bioweapon as soon as they solidified their hold over the Unity's remaining systems. Humanity wasn't just a future target, they were on the list of planned exterminations. Her aide, a young officer named Daniels, stood stiffly by her side. Ambassador, this changes everything. If this is true. It's true, Kara interrupted. She closed the report and leaned back, her eyes narrowing in thought. The Dominion doesn't leave loose ends. We've known this for a long time. But what do we do now? Daniels asked, his voice barely concealing the urgency he felt. The Council is looking for leadership. If we won't make decisions out of panic, Kara said sharply, though her tone softened as she added. We've spent decades building our position in this galaxy. We don't throw that away because the situation looks bleak. Daniels hesitated before speaking again. But neutrality isn't protection anymore. Not against something like this. Kara didn't respond immediately. She understood the weight of his words. Humanity had thrived by staying out of the galaxy's wars, but this wasn't just a war, it was survival. The Zalran Dominion's aggression wasn't about territory or ideology. It was about total domination. And their weapon wasn't a threat that humanity could outmaneuver with clever trade policies or quiet diplomacy. The next day, Kara returned to the council chamber. The session began as it had the day before, with pleas and accusations. The Unity was growing impatient. You sit behind your walls and count your credits while the galaxy burns, a delegate sneered. If humanity won't act now, it won't matter how rich or powerful you are. The Dominion will come for you next. Kara rose slowly, commanding the attention of the room. Her gaze swept across the chamber, lingering just long enough to make each representative feel as though she was addressing them directly. Humanity does not take sides lightly. We have maintained peace in our territories through careful diplomacy, through cooperation, and yes, through neutrality. She paused, allowing the murmurs to settle. But neutrality is not the same as inaction. And make no mistake, humanity sees what is coming. We see the choices before us, and we are weighing them carefully. Her words were measured, but they carried an undercurrent of steel. It wasn't a commitment, but it wasn't a dismissal either. For the first time, some of the Unity representatives dared to hope. As the session ended, Kara's words hung in the air, their implications impossible to ignore. Humanity hadn't made its move yet, but the galaxy was beginning to realize that when it did, everything could change. That night, as the stars twinkled outside her office window, Kara knew one thing for certain. Humanity's time on the sidelines was coming to an end. The destruction of Eden's Reach was swift and brutal. The Zalran Dominion had chosen their target carefully, a bustling trade hub where hundreds of species mingled in peace. It was humanity's pride, a shining beacon of their neutral stance and economic prowess. In a matter of hours, that beacon was extinguished. The attack was precise, methodical, and devastating. Millions perished, and the station itself was left as little more than a field of debris floating silently in the void. The news spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of human-controlled space. Broadcasts replayed the chilling images of the attack, shattered hulls of merchant vessels, emergency beacons flickering futilely, and survivors clinging to life in escape pods. The attack was not just an assault on a human asset, it was a message. The Zalran Dominion wanted humanity to know that their neutrality meant nothing. They had drawn a line in the stars, and humanity was now firmly on the wrong side of it. In the streets of Earth's megacities, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Protesters flooded public squares, demanding justice. Humanity had always valued its pragmatism, but this attack struck at something deeper, a collective sense of vulnerability and outrage. For a species that had long avoided war, the prospect of being targeted on such a scale ignited a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Never again became a rallying cry, painted on banners, plastered across screens, and chanted in unison by crowds numbering in the millions. In the corridors of power, the mood was equally grim. Leaders convened emergency sessions to assess the situation, but no consensus could be reached. The old arguments resurfaced. Was it better to retaliate, risking total war, or to double down on diplomacy and try to salvage some form of neutrality? The debates were fierce, but the attack had shifted the calculus. Neutrality had protected them once, but it was now a shield made of glass, easily shattered and offering no true safety. Kara Miles found herself at the center of it all. As humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Council, she was the face of their diplomacy, and, increasingly, the voice of their people's anger. In private, she had spent hours poring over intelligence reports, analyzing every detail of the attack. The conclusion was inescapable. The Zalran Dominion wasn't just flexing its muscles. This was a deliberate provocation, designed to force humanity into a corner. Her advisors were divided. Some urged restraint, arguing that retaliation would only escalate the conflict. Others demanded immediate action, pointing out that the Dominion would see anything less as weakness. Kara listened to them all, her expression unreadable. She knew the stakes better than anyone. A misstep here wouldn't just cost lives, it could determine the future of humanity itself. In the midst of this turmoil, a transmission arrived from the Unity of Free Species. Their leadership, desperate for reinforcements, invited Kara to a secret meeting. The location was deep within their controlled space, far from the front lines but still within reach of Dominion patrols. It was a risk, but one Kara was willing to take. The Unity needed to see humanity as more than just an observer. They needed to see a partner. The meeting was tense. Unity leaders were visibly shaken, their desperation palpable. They had suffered loss after loss, their fleets scattered, their worlds under siege. They had hoped that humanity's neutrality would shield them, offering a safe harbor or at least a reliable trading partner. But the attack on Eden's Reach had shattered that illusion. Now, they looked to Kara with a mix of hope and fear. "Ambassador Miles," one of them began, their voice strained. "Your people have seen the same horrors we face every day. You must understand by now that neutrality is not an option. The Dominion will not stop until we are all under their rule, or worse." Kara nodded, her face somber. "I understand your position," she said carefully. "But humanity does not make decisions lightly. If we are to join this war, it will not be as followers. We will lead." The room fell silent. The Unity leaders exchanged uncertain glances. They had hoped for reinforcements, for weapons and ships. They hadn't anticipated this. Leadership was a contentious issue among the Unity factions, each species vying for influence. To cede that role to humanity, a species that had only recently entered the galactic stage, was almost unthinkable. "We're not asking for dominance," Kara continued, her tone measured. "But humanity will not fight under a fractured command. If we join this war, it will be as partners. As equals." The debate that followed was heated. Some Unity leaders argued that they had no choice. Humanity's resources and technology were too valuable to ignore. Others balked at the idea of relinquishing control, fearing that humanity's involvement would overshadow their own efforts. Kara listened patiently, letting the argument play out. She knew they needed to reach the decision themselves. Any perception of coercion would only deepen the divisions within their ranks. In the end, desperation won out. The Unity leaders agreed, begrudgingly, but unanimously. Humanity would take a leadership role in the war effort, coordinating strategies and providing a much-needed unifying force. It was a gamble, but one they were willing to take. As the meeting adjourned, Kara felt the weight of their decision settling on her shoulders. The road ahead would be treacherous, but humanity had made its choice. The attack on Eden's Reach had marked the end of their neutrality. Now they were committed, not just to defending themselves, but to reshaping the galaxy itself. That night, as she prepared to leave, Kara received a final report from her intelligence team. The bioweapon was more advanced than they had initially believed, capable of targeting not just humans but any species with similar genetic markers. It was a weapon of mass extinction, and the Dominion intended to deploy it soon. The news only solidified her resolve. Humanity was no longer on the sidelines. They were in the fight now, and they wouldn't stop until the Dominion was defeated. The announcement came with the weight of inevitability. The Galactic Assembly had been summoned for an emergency broadcast, and representatives from across the stars gathered in tense anticipation. The room buzzed with speculation. Humanity's actions since the attack on Eden's Reach had not gone unnoticed. Their fleets had been mobilizing, their factories working overtime. Rumors spread that something monumental was about to happen. Ambassador Kara Miles stepped onto the central podium, her expression calm but unyielding. The chamber fell silent as her image was projected onto holographic displays across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as humanity prepared to make its stance clear. "Members of the Galactic Assembly," Kara began, her voice steady. "Humanity has long valued its neutrality. For decades we have worked to foster trade, diplomacy, and understanding among the species of this galaxy. We have avoided entangling ourselves in conflicts, not out of fear, but out of principle." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "But neutrality is not the same as indifference. We have watched the horrors inflicted by the Zalran Dominion. We have seen the suffering of those who stand against them. And now, we have felt their wrath firsthand." Her voice grew firmer. "The attack on Eden's Reach was not just an assault on humanity, it was a declaration of war. The Zalran Dominion seeks to dominate all who oppose them. They leave no room for neutrality, no space for coexistence. In the face of such tyranny, humanity cannot and will not stand idly by." The room remained silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Then she delivered the statement that would change the course of the galaxy forever. Effective immediately, humanity is joining the war. The reactions were instant and polarized. The unity of free species erupted in cheers and applause, their representatives visibly relieved. They had gained a powerful ally, one they hoped could turn the tide of the war. The Zauran delegates, however, exchanged cold, calculating glances. To them, humanity was a minor power, untested in galactic warfare. They believed their overwhelming military might would crush this new adversary, just as it had so many others. Kara wasn't done. "Let me be clear," she continued, her tone sharpening. "Humanity does not join this fight as a minor player. We do not enter wars lightly, and when we do, we fight to win. The Dominion has underestimated us, as it has underestimated the resilience and determination of all free species. That ends today." With those words, humanity's war effort moved into high gear. Within hours of the announcement, fleets of ships began departing from human space, heading toward Unity-controlled territories. These weren't hastily assembled forces or outdated vessels. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility for years, and now they revealed the full extent of their technological prowess. The centerpiece of their arsenal was the Vanguard fleet, a collection of modular, AI-driven warships designed for adaptability and efficiency. Each ship was equipped with advanced cloaking systems, cutting-edge weaponry, and autonomous drones capable of operating independently or in coordinated swarms. The fleet was a testament to humanity's ingenuity, a blend of technological sophistication and strategic foresight. The Dominion's first encounter with the Vanguard fleet came just days after the announcement. A Zauran task force, confident in their superiority, engaged a smaller human contingent near a contested system. What they expected to be a swift victory turned into a humiliating defeat. The human ships moved with precision, adapting to the Zauran tactics in real time. Drones overwhelmed their defenses, and targeted strikes disabled their capital ships with surgical accuracy. By the end of the battle, the Zauran task force was in full retreat. News of the victory spread quickly, bolstering morale across Unity-controlled space. For the first time in years, there was hope. Humanity's entry into the war wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a game-changer. But it wasn't just the fleet that made an impact. Humanity's ground forces, known officially as the Terran Defense Corps, earned the nickname Deathwalkers after their first deployment. These soldiers were unlike anything the Dominion had faced before. Clad in advanced exosuits that enhanced strength and speed, they operated with a level of coordination and discipline that left their enemies reeling. They didn't rely on brute force alone, their tactics were calculated, precise, and devastatingly effective. The Dominion soon realized they weren't just fighting another faction, they were facing an entirely new kind of warfare. Humanity didn't adhere to the rigid strategies the Zauran were accustomed to. Instead, they embraced asymmetry, using unpredictability as a weapon. Sabotage operations disrupted supply lines, while misinformation campaigns sowed confusion among Dominion ranks. Each engagement was a lesson in adaptability, one the Dominion was ill-equipped to learn. Kara Miles continued to play a pivotal role, not just as a diplomat but as a strategist. Her leadership extended beyond speeches and negotiations. She worked tirelessly to coordinate efforts between humanity and the Unity factions, bridging divides and fostering a sense of solidarity. Her message was simple but powerful. We are stronger together. Under her guidance, the Unity began to reorganize. Fractured factions set aside their differences, uniting under a centralized command structure with humanity at its core. The shift was dramatic. What had once been a loose coalition of desperate forces became a cohesive alliance, capable of standing up to the Dominion's relentless advance. Still, the road ahead was fraught with challenges. The Dominion wasn't going to back down easily, and every victory came at a cost. But humanity had made its position clear. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the very idea of freedom. In the weeks following the announcement, the galaxy began to change. Species that had been on the brink of surrender found renewed courage. Neutral factions, inspired by humanity's boldness, began reconsidering their positions. The Dominion's aura of invincibility, once unshakable, now showed cracks. For humanity, this was only the beginning. They had stepped into the fire, knowing full well the risks. But as Kara had said, humanity didn't fight to participate. They fought to win. And as the Dominion was quickly learning, they fought like no one else in the galaxy. The war began to shift, not with a sudden, sweeping victory but with a series of calculated moves that displayed humanity's ingenuity and resolve. The Zalran Dominion, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force and rigid strategies, found themselves struggling to adapt. Humanity had entered the battlefield with tactics that were as unpredictable as they were devastating. The first signs of change came with the disruption of the Dominion's supply chains. Human operatives, working in tandem with the Unity, launched a coordinated assault on key logistical hubs. Stealth frigates equipped with advanced cloaking systems infiltrated Dominion-controlled territories, laying waste to depots, convoys, and refueling stations. Entire fleets were left stranded, their fuel reserves depleted and their supply lines severed. But it wasn't just sabotage. Humanity's fleets didn't rely on brute strength or massive numbers. Instead, they employed what the Dominion would later describe as chaotic precision. Battles were carefully choreographed to maximize confusion. Dominion commanders found their fleets hemmed in by invisible mines, ambushed by drones, and disoriented by targeted jamming systems that scrambled communications. It wasn't long before even seasoned Zalran officers began to fear engagements with human forces. On the ground, the Deathwalkers continued to live up to their reputation. In a key battle over the industrial world of Gravant 6, the Dominion deployed over 100,000 troops, supported by mechanized units and orbital bombardments. The Deathwalkers faced them with just 10,000 soldiers, but the outcome was nothing short of legendary. Using advanced terrain analysis and guerrilla tactics, they turned the Dominion's numerical superiority into a liability. Ambushes struck supply convoys, EMP bursts disabled their walkers, and traps led entire platoons into dead zones where they were systematically eliminated. The victory at Gravant 6 wasn't just a tactical win, it was a turning point. Footage of the battle, captured by Unity observers, became a rallying cry for species across the galaxy. The sight of humanity, fighting with relentless determination and precision, inspired hope in those who had long believed the war was unwinnable. Behind the scenes, Kara Miles continued to work tirelessly, not just as a diplomat but as the de facto leader of the Unity's War Council. Her ability to navigate the political complexities of the coalition was as vital as humanity's military contributions. The Unity factions, previously divided by old grudges and conflicting priorities, began to unite under her guidance. Kara wasn't content with merely coordinating military efforts. She pushed for reforms within the Unity itself, emphasizing the need for a cohesive strategy. Species that had once refused to share resources now pooled their fleets and armies. Joint training programs were established, with human officers teaching Unity soldiers the tactics and strategies that had made the Deathwalkers so effective. One of the most critical developments during this period was the introduction of humanity's hybrid AI-human fleet. These ships weren't just tools of war, they were extensions of the crews that operated them. Using neural interfaces, human pilots could synchronize their actions with AI systems, achieving a level of coordination that the Dominion couldn't match. This innovation allowed human fleets to adapt to changing battle conditions in real time, exploiting weaknesses the moment they appeared. The Dominion's response was predictable. Unable to match humanity's adaptability, they resorted to increasingly brutal measures. Civilian populations in contested territories were targeted, entire cities razed to the ground as examples of the Dominion's wrath. For the Zalran, the goal was simple: break the spirit of resistance. But humanity refused to be intimidated. For every atrocity committed by the Dominion, there was a response. Human fleets prioritized the protection of civilian populations, even at great risk to themselves. In one particularly daring operation, a task force led by the flagship Resolute managed to evacuate over 2 million civilians from a besieged planet, while under heavy fire. The operation, later dubbed the Exodus of Lyria, became a symbol of humanity's unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent. This commitment didn't go unnoticed. Species that had remained neutral began to reconsider their positions. The Terran, a race of skilled engineers who had avoided the war out of fear of Dominion retaliation, announced their support for the Unity after witnessing humanity's actions. They brought with them advanced shielding technology that would prove invaluable in future battles. The Dominion, however, was not without its own strategies. They began deploying advanced countermeasures, targeting humanity's AI systems with sophisticated cyberattacks. For a time, these tactics slowed humanity's momentum, forcing them to adapt once again. But adapt they did. Human engineers developed decentralized AI networks that could operate independently, rendering the Dominion's attacks ineffective. Even as humanity pushed the Dominion back, the cost of the war became increasingly apparent. Casualties mounted, and the strain on resources grew. Kara made it a point to acknowledge these sacrifices in every address, her words carefully chosen to honor the fallen while inspiring those who remained. Her speeches became a source of strength for soldiers and civilians alike, a reminder of what they were fighting for. As the Dominion's losses mounted, cracks began to appear in their empire. Subjugated species, emboldened by humanity's example, began to rise up. Resistance movements sprang to life on dozens of worlds, their efforts coordinated through encrypted channels provided by human intelligence networks. The Dominion found itself fighting on multiple fronts, its forces stretched thin. It was clear that the tide of the war had turned, but victory was far from assured. The Dominion still controlled vast territories and maintained a formidable fleet. They were ruthless, unyielding, and willing to sacrifice millions to maintain their dominance. For humanity and the Unity, every gain came at a price, and the road ahead remained fraught with danger. Yet, despite the challenges, one thing was certain: the galaxy was no longer the Dominion's playground. Humanity had proven that they were not just another species to be conquered. They were innovators, strategists, and warriors. And as the Dominion would soon learn, they were just getting started. The final assault on Zarathar Prime was humanity's boldest operation yet. The Zalran Dominion's capital was more than a planet, it was the heart of their empire, fortified by centuries of military doctrine and layered defenses. Surrounding it were vast orbital platforms bristling with weapons, fleets of battle-hardened warships, and legions of troops ready to defend their leaders to the death. It was a fortress thought to be impenetrable, a symbol of the Dominion's unyielding power. For humanity and the Unity, it was their ultimate target. The plan was audacious. The Vanguard fleet would lead the charge, drawing the Dominion's armada into a carefully prepared trap within a nearby nebula. Meanwhile, covert operatives on the surface would disable key planetary defenses, paving the way for a ground invasion. It was a strategy that required precision, coordination, and a level of risk that made even seasoned commanders hesitate. But humanity had proven time and again that they thrived under impossible odds. The operation began with the fleet's advance. Human ships moved in tight formations, their AI systems calculating optimal firing patterns and evasive maneuvers with uncanny accuracy. The Dominion met them head-on, confident that their superior numbers would overwhelm the human forces. But as the battle unfolded, it became clear that this was no ordinary engagement. The nebula, seemingly chosen as a desperate staging ground, was in fact a meticulously prepared battlefield. Humanity had spent weeks seeding the area with stealth mines and automated turrets, each programmed to target Dominion ships. As the Zalran armada pushed forward, these hidden weapons activated, tearing through their ranks with brutal efficiency. Chaos erupted as Dominion commanders scrambled to adapt, their carefully arranged formations collapsing under the onslaught. In the midst of the chaos, humanity's hybrid AI-human ships executed precise flanking maneuvers, striking at the Dominion's command vessels. One by one, the massive dreadnoughts that served as the backbone of their fleet were disabled or destroyed. For the first time, the Zalran Dominion found themselves outmaneuvered, outthought, and outfought. While the battle raged in space, the ground phase of the operation began. Covert teams, including Deathwalkers and Unity operatives, infiltrated Zarathar Prime's surface. Their mission was to disable the planetary shields and disrupt the Dominion's communication networks, ensuring that reinforcements couldn't be summoned. The infiltrators faced brutal resistance. The Dominion's elite guards, augmented with advanced cybernetics, were formidable opponents. But humanity's operatives were prepared. Using a combination of stealth, advanced weaponry, and psychological warfare, they struck at key installations, dismantling the Dominion's defenses piece by piece. Explosions lit up the night sky as shield generators were destroyed, and command centers were reduced to rubble. With the shields down, the Deathwalkers led the main assault. Thousands of troops descended onto Zarathar Prime, their exocets gleaming as they marched through the shattered remains of the Dominion's outer defenses. They faced relentless counterattacks, but their resolve never wavered. Each inch of ground was contested, every victory hard-earned. Amid the chaos, resistance movements on Zarathar Prime began to rise. Inspired by humanity's efforts, enslaved species broke their chains and joined the fight. Armed with weapons scavenged from fallen Dominion soldiers, they turned their oppressors' strength against them. The streets of Zarathar Prime became a battleground, with civilians and soldiers fighting side by side for their freedom. As the Dominion's forces faltered, the true scale of the rebellion became apparent. Entire districts of the capital city fell to the uprising, and Dominion officers found themselves outnumbered and outmatched. The once proud defenders of Zarathar Prime were reduced to isolated pockets of resistance, desperately holding on as their empire crumbled around them. At the center of the conflict, Kara Miles coordinated the operation from the command ship Resolute. Her voice, calm and unwavering, guided both fleet commanders and ground forces. Every decision she made was precise, every command delivered with clarity. Her leadership was a beacon of hope for those fighting on the front lines. As the final strongholds fell, humanity turned its attention to the Dominion's leadership. The Zalran High Council, the architects of the war, had retreated to an underground bunker deep beneath the capital. Protected by layers of security and loyal guards, they believed themselves untouchable. But humanity had planned for this. A team of Deathwalkers, accompanied by Unity specialists, launched a daring assault on the bunker. Using specialized tunneling equipment and diversionary tactics, they breached the defenses and stormed the council chamber. The Zalran leaders, once so confident in their power, now faced the very forces they had sought to destroy. Kara's ultimatum to the council was as simple as it was final. Surrender unconditionally, or face annihilation. The Dominion's leaders, faced with the reality of their situation, had no choice but to comply. Their surrender marked the end of the Zalran Dominion as a galactic superpower. With the war over, humanity and the Unity turned their attention to rebuilding. Zarathar Prime, once a symbol of oppression, became a beacon of hope. The enslaved species that had fought for their freedom now worked to create a new society, one founded on equality and cooperation. Humanity, true to their word, refused to dominate. Instead, they helped establish a galactic charter, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. The unity of free species became a true alliance, united not by desperation but by a shared vision of the future. Kara Miles, hailed as the architect of victory, declined offers of political power. She chose instead to step away from the spotlight, leaving behind a legacy of leadership and sacrifice. Her name, like the phrase, "Everything changed when the human diplomat said we are joining the war," would live on in history. The galaxy, scarred but hopeful, began to heal. And humanity, no longer the neutral observer, embraced their new role as defenders of freedom and unity.